I'm your host, Stephen Vanover, on the SportsTalkLine network, where we talk sports 24/7 at 365. This is NFL Draft Talk, and tonight we're going to review the Los Angeles Rams 2019 NFL Draft. As always, we're going to bring on the man. You can find him on Twitter at Connor NFL Draft, but tonight you'll find him right here. I'm talking about Connor Livesay. Good day, sir.
What's going on, guys? Happy to be on again.
Man, you know, it's always a pleasure to have you. We're going to go with the speed round here. This is like the beginning of the week, so everybody has things to do. Let's jump right in this. This is a team that had no first-round draft pick, but I don't know. It looks pretty good to me. What's it look like to your eyes? Did they do a pretty good job?
Yeah, this is exactly how you should draft if you don't have that first-round draft pick. You make a couple trades, you stockpile some picks, and you add a bunch of talent. And that's exactly what I think the Rams did, especially with their first overall pick in the second round, 61st overall. They took Taylor Rapp, who many people thought was a first-round talent, had some injury concerns leading up to the draft with some hips, some lower body things. He didn't run a quick 40 time, so people were worried about his long speed, his injury history. That made him fall down a little bit. But for a guy who's going to play down in the box most of his snaps, I think there was hard pressing to find a better safety in this draft class that could do the things that he could do in the box. I think with Taylor Rapp, you got a guy who can cover a little bit. He can make plays sideline to sideline in the run game. And he doesn't mind coming in that backfield, making plays on the quarterback or running back behind the line of scrimmage. And you got to love that with Taylor Rapp.
Well, it's a double dip for them, if you ask me, because they had to let a lot of talent go due to salary cap concerns. You know, they're in that role. They paid some guys in their second contract starting at running back. They needed some guys that they could bring in that can step up on a rookie contract. And I think Taylor Rapp fills that, don't you?
Yeah, I think they in their next pick, a guy we're going to talk about, Darrell Henderson, I think that was a position of need, but also a position of value, because it's 70th overall. You got a guy who a lot of people had in the top 50, one of their top running backs, Darrell Henderson out of Memphis, a guy who is a lot of fun to watch, undersized guy that plays with great burst, home run hitting ability. You just love what you see on tape from Darrell Henderson as a pure runner, but as a receiver, as a guy who can just hit that home run. And we don't know what's going on with Todd Gurley's knee. His knee's been an issue dating back to college. It's given him issues now. He didn't play a lot in the playoffs, barely played at all in the Super Bowl. So they're looking at a point now where they have to plan for future after Todd Gurley, just 2 years into this contract. So it's not a good look for them financially for the Rams, but getting a guy who can probably come in and play three downs for you, could, take 15 to 20 carries a game in Darrell Henderson in the third round is just a huge value steal for me with that talent on the board still.
Well, and with his burst, with his availability in the passing game, you have to think he's going to get maybe 10, 15 snaps as is, regardless of what Gurley is, right?
Yeah, they'll definitely get him in there. We saw last year with C.J. Anderson, just even when both of those guys were together, even though Gurley's knee wasn't 100%, they were still giving Anderson touches because of his ability to make plays. And I think that's a similar role that we're going to see with Henderson. He had astronomical numbers in Memphis. The Memphis running game scheme is very dynamic. They do a lot of good things with their blocking scheme to open up clear running lanes for their runners. And Sean McVay and the Rams do similar things with their running game as well. So it's going to be an easy transition for Henderson, who's going to go from a scheme that really relied on him and made things easy for him. He's going to go into that same thing with the Rams.
All right, well, they go from a Memphis pick to a Michigan pick because they go defense again at cornerback. David Long, talk to me. Are they just looking at depth and special teams here, or third round, man? I mean, can this guy play?
No, I think David Long can play. He's the guy that kind of grew on me late in this process. It wasn't as high as on him on my first few viewings, but then I watched a little bit more of him, and I really liked what I saw from him. Not a guy with a great size, not a guy with a great intangibles, athletic ability, stuff like that, but he's just a player, man. The tape shows a guy who is always around the football. He's always in the right spots at the right time, has pretty solid ball skills, can play inside, can play out. So you got to like what he brings to the table, especially in the third round. I thought he could go much higher than that because of the tape. But I guess, the lack of elite athleticism, the lack of elite, size and physicality might have thrown some teams off. But I really like, grabbing him that late at the back end of the third round. I think he's a guy who could actually come in and start for the Rams in year one with Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib. Long could probably come in and play the slot at times, could play some outside as well. So I really like that pick for them, for a team that really struggled in the secondary last year. I think that's another great value pick, but also addressing a position of need as well.
Yeah, my notes that I had on that guy, the thing that stood out for me was I had written down had a nose for the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just something you really can't teach, is it?
No. And again, he's a guy that you just got to love what he brings now, but also what he could bring in a few years, just the development of what David Long could be in a scheme with Wade Phillips and some other talented defensive linemen. It really does make you excited for what he could bring.
All right, well, next, they had a pretty darn good offensive line last year. Some would say perhaps one of the best in the NFL, but they have some guys older, and offensive line especially, you can never stand still, especially with contracts like they are. They went and got Bobby Evans out of Oklahoma. What's he going to do for them?
Love Bobby Evans, a guy who can play inside, could probably play he's going to probably play outside, but he could also play some inside as well. Has great size, moves pretty well for his size, but he was a part of that elite Oklahoma blocking O-line under Lincoln Riley the last few years at Oklahoma. And you just got to love what he brings to the table as a pass blocker, as a run blocker, a guy that can get out in space and do some damage in the second level. His size and his athleticism are the two things that stand out. But he's also a guy that, like I said, he's going to play with good technique, a little rough around the edges as far as his pass sets, needs to work on that a little bit. But as a guy who can get out in space and run block for Todd Gurley and Darrell Henderson, that was another great value pick in the third round for the Rams.
All right, and then they're going to come back after that, and they're going to stick in the pit, but they're going to go defensive tackle Greg Gaines out of Washington.
Yeah, and this was one of the picks that, kind of made me scratch my head a little bit. I didn't see Gaines as being a fourth rounder. He was more like a sixth, seventh rounder, a later guy, nose tackle. But they lost Ndamukong Suh in free agency, so they're looking to kind of fill that role. I don't know if he's going to fill it this year. It might be a little bit of a development pick for years to come. He could come in and play as a nose tackle there. But again, he's a big body guy who's going to fill gaps in the run game. He's going to eat up double teams. He can give you a little bit of push as a pass rusher as well. So not a flashy pick by any means, probably a little bit of a reach for Gaines. But again, you got to like they're addressing these positions of need, but also getting pretty solid value in return as well. And that's what you want to do in the drafts. People say you don't want to draft for need, but you're not going to draft the quarterback in the first round if you have a franchise quarterback. You're not going to draft a defensive end in the first round if you have two cornerstone defensive ends. It's just, you want to address needs as well. And I think that's what the Rams did here without having that first round pick. They said, let's get some guys who are going to be safe players for us, who are going to see the field in year 1, year 2, year 3, and it might not be the huge difference makers, but they're going to be able to come in and compete and get playing time. And that's what they did with their first few picks.
All right, then they jump into round 5. They're still sticking in the pit. They go back up offensive line again. They get Nick Scott out of Penn State. And this is kind of an interesting pick to me. What about you?
Well, you skipped over David Edwards, which might be...
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, David Edwards. I apologize. That is the 5th round pick, yeah.
And again, David Edwards was another guy that I wasn't a big fan of. He was the Colton Miller of this year's draft class. Last year, Colton Miller went in the first round. A lot of people had a 5th, 6th round grade on Colton Miller. Colton Miller goes in the first round of the Raiders, has a pretty bad rookie season. Most people expected that. David Edwards was the Colton Miller, but he went where he should have went. He's a guy that didn't test quite as well as we expected him to, but he's a good athlete. Everything you see on tape shows a guy that can move well. He can get out in space. He looks athletic as his pass blocking. So you really like what you see from Edwards on tape at times. It just wasn't consistent, and that's why his grades fell. But again, in the 5th round, a guy who can play tackle, can play, he's going to probably be a left or right tackle. He can probably move either side of the line for them. I do like that pick as a developmental offensive tackle with good traits. That's what you're looking for in these late rounds, and that's what they did in the 5th round with David Edwards.
Well, yeah, if you'd taken Colton Miller in the 5th, all would have been rosy, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're going to skip down to Nick Scott. Again, this time, though, at safety out of Penn State. I'm sorry.
And he's a guy that you mentioned earlier, a special teams guy. That's what he's going to be. They already have Eric Weddle. They have John Johnson. They drafted Taylor Rapp. So he might see a little bit of playing time in the secondary. But he's going to be a guy that's going to battle for a roster spot first. And then if he does make it, he'll be a guy that they want to get involved in special teams, a good athlete, a guy who showed some coverage ability at Penn State, but just not the most smart, not the guy with the best instincts at the back end. Those are things he has to improve on, and that's the reason he lasted to the 7th round. But a guy who's going to do a great job tackling on special teams, and he did a really solid job at Penn State tackling when he did have to come up and make tackles in the open field.
That's your job right there on special teams. And then they come back and they double up on the same concept, right, with Dakota Allen out of Texas Tech, linebacker?
Yep, and same kind of, like you said, same little scenario here, a guy who's probably not going to make a huge difference on defense, but he's going to battle. He's going to bring competition in training camp. He's going to hopefully make this roster and play special teams. I think Dakota Allen would have went a little earlier in this draft. He had some off-the-field issues coming out of Texas Tech that kind of pushed him down. But again, a guy who showed some good things on tape, showed some good athleticism on tape. So he's going to come in, and the Rams need linebackers. They traded away Alec Ogletree a few years ago to the Giants.
Yes.
And they just don't have those stud linebackers. So adding a late round guy that has some talent, some value there wasn't a bad idea. And I really like the Rams draft for not having a first round pick. The Cowboys also didn't have a first round pick, and people were kind of, saying, well, you can't have a good draft if you don't have a first-round pick. But I think the Rams showed them exactly how it could have been done.
Well, any draft that you get Tom Brady in the 5th, it's a good draft. I don't care if you had a first-round pick or not. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and here as we close off, Connor, one of the things that we always have to do, of course, is the draft grade, drum roll. And, of course, we all know that you can't really grade them now, but we all know that we have to grade them now. So, all right, what do you got?
And like you said, you can't grade a graph without seeing these guys play first. You're kind of just basing it all off evaluations, and people developed in months and weeks and years. So, the thing I like to do is kind of power rank these drafts and give them tier grades. And I would put the Rams in that tier 2 grade of all 32 teams. So I'd put them in that 10 to 15 range of grades is where I'd have those. Probably somewhere in that 12 range is where, if I had to power rank these drafts, that's where they would be. I can't give them an A, I can't give them a B, because these guys could tear their ACLs and never play. And then, but I like what they did. I think they get I'd power rank them in that 12 to 15 range without having a first round pick. That is an absolute home run for them.
Yeah, I totally agree with your assessment. I really like this draft. That's what I look at. I look at it as a body as a whole. There is no singular home run in there, but the body of work, the way that it fits their team, what's not to like, right?
Yeah, and they always say, man, it's good teams normally find a way to draft well, no matter if they have a first-round pick, no first-round pick, 6 first-round picks, whatever. If you don't have the picks or you do have the picks, good football teams seem to draft well. We've seen that in years outside of the Patriots. Somehow the Patriots never seem to draft well, and they just keep winning. So
it doesn't matter. They use pixie dust, man. It just gets it done. You got pixie dust, you're okay.
Yeah.
What struck me about this draft was he is a student of the game, and of course I'm talking about the very young head coach here. And, of course, he got outcoached in the Super Bowl by Bill Belichick, and a guy that they actually talk almost weekly during the season. And I'm looking at this NFL draft of the LA Rams. Isn't this a Bill Belichickian style draft, maximizing their number of picks, going after the type of players that can help your team, that have talent that you can coach up, no problem children here? Isn't this that type of draft?
Yeah, I kind of think that's a good point. Outside of Dakota Allen, all these guys are super clean off the field.
Right.
They're guys who you're not drafting. A lot of people draft the projects. I think some people might consider Colton Miller a project just because not Colton Miller, David Edwards a project just because his tape wasn't as good as some people would expect.
Miller Jr., right.
Yeah, but you got the Taylor Rapps, who was always going to be solid. It was just taking the risk on the injury history and the speed, but he's always going to be a 10-year starter in the league at safety, and he's never going to be an all-pro, but he's probably going to make a few Pro Bowls. He's probably going to be a consistent tackler. That's what you're going to give a Taylor Rapp. That's a Bill Belichick pick. Darrell Henderson, another guy who might not ever be Todd Gurley, might never be Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, but he's going to be a top 15 back in the league, probably for many years to come. And that's what the Patriots have had for years. The LeGarrette Blunts, the Sony Michels, the James Whites, that's what they've had. So that's kind of what they did with their first few picks, and then backing it up with the Greg Gaines. That's such a Bill Belichick pick too, just a big, fat guy who plays in the middle, doesn't do anything sexy, but he makes plays. And that's what they did.
All right, well, that explains the draft in a nutshell. I like their draft as well. I appreciate it. Before you go signing off, Trevor, why don't you go ahead and tell us Connor, about your social media presence and about what you're going to be writing as we come into the next season of the NFL Draft.
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at Connor NFL Draft. And then, here coming up soon, once training camps get starting, we're going to be doing more reviews on these players, how they're looking in training camp. And then when preseason kicks off, that's when we'll really be able to kind of go back and see how these guys are doing, how they're performing on the field in 11-on-11 football. So it's hard to really grade these guys out right now. But once preseason gets started, once training camp gets started, we're able to see the beat writers let us know how these guys are doing. Then we can see it for ourselves in preseason. And then once the regular season kicks off, we're going to be reviewing all of these guys, all the top guys, trying to get overall grade on these draft class after year one. And that's going to be when the fun really starts.
And for the LA Rams, we're actually going to have some guys boots on the ground in their camps, as well as the Cowboys and the Chargers and some other teams around the league. So it's going to be a lot of fun. On YouTube, give us that subscribe and then hit that little bell for that notify. We certainly appreciate that. On Twitter, give us a like and a retweet, if you will, please, and push this message out there so other people can enjoy the show. On Facebook, we got to have those likes from you guys. Thanks so much for your time. And for everyone, until next time, listen like you play with intensity.